How's it going, boys? Johnny Superb Man here, and I think it's about time to have our summary of the NHL offseason video where I give you guys my opinions on all the movements that have gone on, the new faces in the new places, and there has been a lot. I mean, Jesus, the signings, there's even been a few trades in the draft. A lot has happened, right? So I want to give you guys my opinions on some of these things. I'm not going to talk about everything. There's so much has happened. I want to talk about the top 5 picks, a few trades, and the top signings the way I see them, all right? So I may miss a few things here, but if you guys want to still mention them in the comments, go nuts. This is everything to do with the offseason so far. So first up, we'll talk about the NHL draft. The first overall pick went to the Florida Panthers, and before they selected Aaron Ekblad, there was a lot of talk about them possibly moving that pick, trading to get a few prospects, a draft pick, to move down, to still get the top 10, to still get a top 10 pick, but to pick up a prospect and an NHL-ready player, right? And I was thinking to myself, I don't know why Florida would do that. If you have the first overall pick, you got to take it, right? Especially in today's age where it seems like the first overall pick always turns out to be a great player, a first-line player. And at the end of the day, they did end up taking Aaron Ekblad. They ended up holding on to that first overall pick. I think the only thing that Florida Panthers were doing was just trying to test the waters, Let everyone think that we're willing to trade the first overall pick, see what comes our way, because you got to do your diligence. You got to see if there's something better out there. But at the end of the day, they did the smart thing. They drafted Aaron Ekblad, and now 3 years in a row, you got Jonathan Huberdeau, Barkov, and Aaron Ekblad. You're starting to put pieces into place to build a future team, and that's the only way I see that you can do it in nowadays NHL. You can't build a team through free agency. You can't really build a team through trading. You got to build a team through the draft, and so I think with the Florida Panthers selecting Aaron Ekblad, that was a great choice. Now, hopefully, in their minds, they have a first-line center with Alexander Barkov or Huberdeau. I don't know if he's a winger now, but hopefully, in their minds, they have a first-line center, and now they have a first-line defenseman, right? And if they do, then that's the beginning core of the future Florida Panthers. So I thought that was a great pick by Florida. Number 2, Sam Reinhart to the Buffalo Sabres. I thought that the Buffalo Sabres might have chose Sam Bennett just because of where he played, the OHL. Reinhart played in the WHL, so, maybe he wanted to get selected by Calgary or Vancouver or someone out there. But you know what? I mean, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, I'm sure he's just happy that he's drafted to the NHL. It seems like the Buffalo Sabres wanted the way that the analysts were talking about it, the higher IQ type NHL player that was in the draft this year. He's got the best hockey sense. He's got the offensive IQ they were talking about. So Buffalo Sabres looking for a first-line center of the future. So nothing wrong with that, picking up Sam Reinhart. The third overall pick, the Edmonton Oilers, going with Leon Draisaitl. Some people were thinking that they would go with Sam Bennett, but Draisaitl's the bigger body, right? And Sam Bennett might just be another Taylor Hall, Nuge, Everly, skilled guy, definitely talented offensively, but I think they want some size there, and that's why they went with Draisaitl. And skipping ahead to a trade, the Sam Gagner trade, right? They moved Gagner out. They got rid of that second-line center, that salary. So I don't know if they're going to play Draisaitl this year, but if they are, it seems like their top 6 now is the Nuge, Taylor Hall, and Jordan Eberle on the first line, and then the second line can either be a combination of Draisaitl, Perron, and Purcell, who they got for Gagner, or Draisaitl, Purcell, or Perron, one of them with Nail Yakupov, right? So they have one winger too many still for the top 6. Maybe one of them moved down to the top 9, right? But now if Draisaitl does become a solid second-line center, the Nuge and Draisaitl, it's starting to come together, but we've been saying this for Edmonton for how many years now, right? So we still got to see. But still a good pick. They got size. I think they would have liked to get Ekblad, but it didn't happen. Number 4, Sam Bennett for the Calgary Flames. I love this pick for Calgary. I think they got a great steal with Sam Bennett just because a center. And going back to last year when they drafted Sean Monahan, right? Another OHLer center who, I'm not going to say is a gritty type player because they do have offensive skill, but they're certainly not winger snipers who are only offensive. Like Monahan and Bennett, hopefully in the minds of the Calgary Flames, you're looking at a future Jonathan Toews. Maybe not that good, right? But that hard, gritty-nosed, Canadian style, I'm going to score goals, but I'm also going to play defense first-line centers, And if they are, then you got Sean Monahan and Sam Bennett 1 and 2, back-to-back years drafted. That's a great 1-2 punch in Calgary. All right, so I think that was a great pick for the Calgary Flames. At number 5, the New York Islanders picking up Michael Del Call, the San Jose Sharks future captain, maybe. No, but definitely somebody, I guess, a scoring touch, a winger for John Tavares to play alongside of. But, you know, how many years is this guy going to take to play alongside of John Tavares? Is he going to be ready in year number 1? I'd imagine playing alongside of a guy like John Tavares, if he does play, he'll get his points, right? But thing about the Islanders pick, this was the draft pick. I was thinking that they would give this pick to the Buffalo Sabres, right? Because they used this pick, which means that next year, the Islanders' first overall pick belongs to Buffalo. And if they don't have a good year this year, again, if they have a top 5 pick, then the Buffalo Sabres have a great chance at getting a Connor McDavid, right? So they went with the pick this year. They picked up Michael Del Call. If he plays this year and takes them into a, you know, a top 10 pick or a top 15 pick, then I suppose it works out. But if the Islanders have another top 5 bottom feeding type season, man, I don't know if that's a good pick. I think I would have given that to Buffalo if you can get the chance at Connor McDavid next year, all right? But we'll see. We'll see. DeCall in the Island. So there's the top 5 for the draft. I don't want to talk about everything else. I can go down the top 10, but we'll just do the main stuff here, all right? Next, we'll talk about some of the trades that happened either on the day of the draft or before the draft or after the draft, right? 3 big-time trades, in my opinion. There was a lot of other trades, but the 3 big ones. First, from the Anaheim Ducks and the Vancouver Canucks. Vancouver sent Ryan Kessler and a 3rd-round pick to Anaheim for Benino Spiza, a 1st and a 2nd. Now, I think the Anaheim Ducks did a great job with this. They picked up their second-line center that they need behind a Ryan Getzlaf, right? Solid second-liner. He still has some years left on his contract, so nothing wrong with that, right? And they gave up a 3rd as well. Or, sorry, they gave up a 1st and a 2nd. But they already had Ottawa's 1st overall pick, so they drafted Nick Ritchie, I believe it was, right? So even though they gave up a 1st of this year and a 2nd, they still had a 1st-round pick that they got to use, right? So I thought it was a great trade for the Anaheim Ducks. And Vancouver, I saw a lot of comments from Vancouver fans saying, Benino Spiza, we got nothing for Ryan Kessler. I wouldn't say that, because Kessler, I wouldn't call a superstar anymore because of the injury bug. You don't know if Ryan Kessler is going to give you an 82-game season. If he does, he's good for points. Like, he's going to be a great player standing on front of the net, good penalty killer, defensive type player, yeah. But once the injury bug hits a player and he turns into his 30s or his late 20s, you know, that little asterisk does get put beside his name. So I think from the Vancouver Canucks standpoint, you got the 1st out of him, you got the 2nd out of him, and you got 2 NHL players that can come into your roster. Whether or not they're going to, you know, produces and be core players of your team in the future, Benino and Spiza, I don't know, but they can play on your team next year, right? So, and also going back to what happened with Luongo and Schneider, you don't want to wait. If the deal is there and you can get something, just get it. So I think with the Vancouver trade with Kessler, they just got it done. They didn't wait this time. They didn't play it out with, oh, we'll wait till the beginning of next season, see if we can get more. They just, you know, just severed the artery, you know, just got rid of it right then, right there. Kessler's in Anaheim. Benino and Spiza are in Vancouver. So I like it from that standpoint. We'll see what Kessler does for Anaheim, and we'll see what Benino and Spiza do for Vancouver, all right? It's one of those trades you got to wait and see, but I applaud the GM of Vancouver. Just get the trade done, you know, no more lingering. So that was a good thing. The next trade. Now, this one kind of caught me by surprise, but at the same time, when I really looked into it, it made sense. James Neal traded from the Pittsburgh Penguins to the Nashville Predators for Hornqvist and Spalling. Now, a lot of people were saying the Pittsburgh Penguins got the short end of the stick here. They didn't get a draft pick in there at all. They got 2 players who are depth players on the Nashville Predators. But the thing is, Hornqvist, he's not a depth player. He can score goals. His contract is good. And he's going to play alongside of a Crosby or a Malkin. Probably Malkin, because Neal is out, right? And if he's going to be playing alongside of a superstar like this, yeah, he could probably get you 20, 25, maybe even 30 goals, right? So don't worry about, what's it called, Nordqvist. Spalling, another roster player, depth, right? I don't know anything about this guy, but what I read is a little bit of a chippier player. You know, he'll use that body, and that's what the Pittsburgh Penguins need. And they got 2 NHL players for 1 here, right? So they fill up their depth a little bit more. And also, they got James Neal's contract out of there. And what I read from a lot of Pittsburgh Penguin fans was, yeah, Neal will put up points. He's great during the regular season, but when the game's on the line, he does stupid things. Like he knees people in the back of the head and takes a third period penalty. Or he'll slash somebody, or he'll have brain farts at times where you need somebody to hunker down and prove that they're truly an NHL player, right? So no doubt he can put points up, but from what I read from some of the comments, you know, just the not immaturity, but the irresponsible. No, not irresponsible. That's not a word, but you can't he can't trust James Neal, I guess, the way that they were putting it in big-time games. That's what I got from the comments, all right? So I think it's an okay trade. If that's the reason that they got James Neal out of there, that they just couldn't trust him anymore, they couldn't trust him in big-time games, well then, you know what? It had to be done. Another thing where they just got it done, they brought in 2 NHLers to fill the spot. So it's another trade where you have to see what Hornqvist, Spalling, and Neal do next year. But for the Nashville Predators, I think it's a good thing because now you bring in a legitimate goal scorer, you know, somebody who's proven around the NHL and even has a little bit of a name to himself. You know, Nashville Predator fans might start thinking, you know, hey, let's go to see a game. James Neal's in the building. Now we can have Shea Weber keeping the puck out and James Neal putting the puck in, right? So I think it's a good trade for the Nashville Predators, and we'll see what it works out for if it works out for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Definitely freed up some cap space, though. And the last trade that I want to talk about, definitely the biggest trade, I think, would be the Jason Spezza trade. Jason Spezza and Carlson, not their defenseman Carlson, or prospect Carlson, traded to the Dallas Stars for Shason, Paul, Guptill, and a second. Now, I don't know who Paul and Guptill is, and Alex Shason, I have not watched too much. I know he had a good season there in Dallas, bigger body. And I think this is another thing. I heard the GM of the Ottawa Senators talk about the trade, and he was talking about how, you know, sometimes when you have to make a trade because the player asks for a trade, you know, there's not really much that you can get back. So this is one of those deals where, because Spezza's only got 1 year left on his contract, it's one of those deals where he just had to get through, right? And maybe there wasn't a lot of offers out there. But when you look at what Vancouver got for Kessler, that's why I say the Kessler trade was actually not that bad, because what Ottawa got back for Spezza, we'll see how these players turn out. They could turn out to be great players, right? But for Spezza, I don't know. But the thing is, Dallas, you might only have Spezza for 1 year. It might be a rental player, right? He might want to test free agency this year and go to wherever he wants to go. Who knows, right? But I don't know. I think it's a great trade for Dallas as well, because they made the playoffs this year with Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn. Now introduced Jason Spezza. I don't think Jason Spezza will play alongside of Seguin and Benn. Maybe on the power play he will. But I say keep Seguin and Benn together, and then Spezza can be on the second line. Now, they also signed Elish Hemsky, who I think had pretty good chemistry there with Spezza in Ottawa. And also, you know, I could be wrong about this. I actually just remember it. I think they just signed Danny Heatley as well to a 1 year deal in Dallas. So if that's true, if they got Spezza and Heatley back together, you never know. That could be some depth goal scoring, right? Danny Heatley might get re-energized playing alongside of his old buddy Jason Spezza. That chemistry might come back, right? Especially in a second line role behind 2 studs like Jamie Benn and Seguin, who really take all the attention away from Spezza and Heatley. So I don't know if Heatley will do anything, but I think Spezza as a second line center for Dallas, I think it's a good move. Even if it's only a 1 year deal, you can decide what to do with him at the trade deadline. If, you know, if he doesn't want to sign a contract extension and he's somebody who, you know, he's going to be gone and you're maybe just a playoff team and he's not really producing on your team this year, then maybe you can unload him for a second round pick or something just to get something back, right? But as of right now, I think it's a great trade for the Dallas Stars. The Ottawa Senators, second year in a row, you've seen your captain go for not much, right? But then again, we'll see what Chase and Paul and Guptill do. I don't know much about these guys. All right, so there's the draft, there's the trades. Last but not least, let's cover some of the signings here. Just the major signings. I've written here 6 signings. First, we'll start with Paul Stastny signing with the St. Louis Blues. 4 years, $28 million. I think this is why you saw Ryan Miller not re-sign with the St. Louis Blues. They wanted to free up some cap space, right? And they brought him in. I mean, obviously, I don't know if he's going to be playing first-line center. They definitely paid him like a first-line center, but they still have Backus in there. They still have Berglund, so we'll see what happens there. But what I like about this deal, and a lot of the deals that were signed in free agency, is the years is not hard at all. 4 years, even if it is, what, $7 million a year, it's not that bad when it's 4 years, you know? Stastny is still relatively young. He's had a good season last year with the St. Louis Blues. I'd imagine they're still going to be a playoff team with him on the lineup. And say he has 1 bad year, well, it's only 3 more years with a bad contract, right? You might be able to move him. And he's not a bad player, so I think it's a solid deal. Even though it's $7 million a year, it's not $7 million a year for 7 years, $7 million a year for only 4 years. I'm fine with that. So I thought the St. Louis Blues, they made a move to get a first, or to beefing up their center position for another playoff run that they're hoping for, you know. So we'll see what happens with Paul Stastny in St. Louis. Speaking of Ryan Miller not signing with St. Louis, he signed with the Vancouver Canucks, 3 years at $18 million. I think this is a great move for Ryan Miller and for Vancouver. I know Vancouver fans and critics are going to be saying, what the hell, they had Schneider, Luongo, they traded them both, and then they just signed Miller. Same age as Luongo, same type of season, you know, may not be a superstar anymore, but still, you know, a great goalie type player. But you know what? Miller, he's only got 3 years left on his contract. Luongo still has like 9 years or 10 years left, right? So even though they don't have Schneider and Luongo, I think bringing in Ryan Miller, it does fit their current plan. Older goalie, yes, but only 3 years, so it's fine. And for Ryan Miller's side of it, I think Ryan Miller, I don't want to call him not a superstar anymore, right? Because he could still have a comeback season. But I think that there are like Lundqvist and Carey Price and Jonathan Quick. These guys are truly the best goalies in the NHL right now. I think a guy like Ryan Miller needs to play on a team that is trying to make it into the playoffs, an underdog team, rather than playing on a team that's expected to win the Stanley Cup. Because when he played with the St. Louis Blues, you know, all the pressure fell on Ryan Miller. Whereas when he was with the Buffalo Sabres, it didn't matter how many goals he let in because it was Ryan Miller in the net. He did his job. It's the team around him. So by going to the Vancouver Canucks, right, Vancouver missed the playoffs, but they still have some talent up front and on the point. They got the Sedin twins. They have Dan Hamhuis and Bieksa back there. So with a good goalie, they could become a playoff team just like that. 1 year turnaround, right? So and Ryan Miller is now being put into a spot where if they fail, it's not going to be all his fault because the team is not the team that it was 5 years ago, right? So I think Miller is in a spot now where he's on a team that can make the playoffs, and with his skill, he can take them to the playoffs. I don't think he's a good enough goalie now to take a team that is a playoff team all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. He's not a Jonathan Quick, he's not a Lundqvist, and he's not a Carey Price. He could turn it around, all right, but I think the Vancouver Canucks are a perfect fit for a Ryan Miller, all right? Same thing with like a Jonas Hiller in Calgary. That was another signing. We're not going to talk about that. But just a team that needs goaltender help, veteran leadership back there, and with that help, with that skill, might become a playoff team. I think it's a great signing for Vancouver. Next, Minnesota signing Thomas Vanek. Now, this one a lot of people saw for a long time. A lot of Montreal Canadian fans might be a little bit bitter with Thomas Vanek. He started off so good, then went a little bit lazy there in the playoffs. But you know what? Another signing where I love the years. He probably could have got 7 years somewhere, but 3 years at $19.5 million. I think that's great. And for Minnesota, you know, take out Danny Heatley's contract. All right, because it was up this year, and put in Thomas Vanek. It was just basically just that. Danny Heatley out, Thomas Vanek in. And it's only 3 years left, so I think that's a great signing for the Minnesota Wild. Why not take it, right? Another winger that can play alongside of Parise or Miku Koivu or Pominville or someone in there, right? Now, the next two. This is going to be my bad signing of free agency, basically. I don't know why they did this. Well, I know why they did it, but it reminds me of other teams that have done this, and then 2 or 3 years down the road, they're non-playoff teams. The Washington Capitals signing Brooks Orpik and Matt Niskanen. Okay, so we'll talk about Orpik first, because I think this is the real bad one. They signed Brooks Orpik to a 5-year, $27.5 million contract, and he's 33 years old already. So this will take him till he's 38 years old, right? Now, it's about, like, what, $5.5 million a year. Now, I'm not saying Brooks Orpik is not a good defenseman, but to me, it just seems like what the Washington Capitals are trying to do right now is you know, they see a guy like Alexander Ovechkin, their franchise player, you know, he's getting up there. He's not getting any younger. He's still in his prime, but he's not getting any younger. So they're trying to win that Stanley Cup, like, next year, the year after that. You know, they're doing whatever they can. And I'm not saying that Orpik and Niskanen won't have good years next year, the year after that, but in 2 or 3 years, they are going to be in such cap problems with these players. No team is going to want to trade for these players if they start to trail off, right? It just reminds me of the Vancouver Canucks signing a guy like Jason Garrison. You might make the playoffs, you might have a good regular season, but is he somebody that is really going to turn the team around and help you win that Stanley Cup, or is he just, a roster player that you're getting and you're overpaying like crazy? I said it earlier on in this video. If you want to build a winning team, a Stanley Cup winning team, it's got to be through the draft. And, you can use free agency to sign 1 or 2 players to fill up your roster, but with the Washington Capitals signing Orpik for 5 years for $27 million and Matt Niskanen for 7 years at $40 million, I mean, now you have over $10 million tied up in 2 defensemen, Orpik and Niskanen, for the next 5 years at least, right? Now, Niskanen's not that bad because he's only 27 years old. That's, 7 years will take him up to 34, which is 1 year older than Orpik is right now, right? So, the Niskanen deal ain't that bad, but I just feel like these are 2 players that are going to be, buyouts in like 2 or 3 years. Maybe not Niskanen, but Orpik. It just does. And with these signings, you got to think Mike Green is out, right? But who's going to want to trade for Mike Green? What about Alsner and Carlson? It feels like it's one of those signings that is, hey, we got to do whatever we can to compete with the West and make it back to the playoffs and win that Stanley Cup with Alexander Ovechkin. And it's just sign. These players played for Pittsburgh. Sign. It feels like reckless spending, in my opinion. All right, we'll see what happens. But these deals, it's not next year that I see the problem. It's the year after that. Especially Orpik. So Niskanen, if they would have just signed Niskanen, I would have been all right. But to sign both of them and a 33-year-old Orpik for 5 years at $27.5 million, I don't know. I just don't see it. But time will tell. If Washington wins the Cup this year, then I will apologize. And last but not least, the last signing that I want to talk about, the best signing in my opinion, is Jarome Iginla to the Colorado Avalanche. Now, I thought Jarome Iginla, the perfect team for Jarome Iginla is the Boston Bruins, just because the style of game that they play, gritty, a little bit slower, but just because they're dump and chase, they work the boards, and, they got older guys like Zdeno Chara, Seidenberg's up there. Well, not really up there, but Milan Lucic, big-time power forward, Bergeron and Krejci, certainly not like end-to-end wingers who are skating up the ice at, 90 miles per hour. Just Boston Bruins gameplay is a little bit slower, and it fits into Jarome Iginla, who's 37 years old now. Now, when you look at the Colorado Avalanche, you're going to have to speed up your game a lot more. Guys like Duchesne, McKinnon, they fly, right? Now, I'm not saying Jarome Iginla can't keep up with them, but it's just a different style. I look at Jarome Iginla and I see the Boston Bruins as a perfect team for him. But Jarome Iginla is a superstar type player, right? Even though he's 37 years old, he had a great season in Boston. And in Colorado, I mean, you can find the right spot for him. You can have the speedy player skate up the ice, and you can have Jarome Iginla, trail up, back pass, and with that big shot, get a goal. So I like Jarome Iginla in Colorado. Out goes Paul Stastny. So now you don't have the 4 centers, as in Duchesne, Stastny, McKinnon, and O'Reilly. Now you've gotten rid of one of those centers, and you bring in a winger, right? Jarome Iginla, 3 years at $16 million. 3 years, he's 37 years old, but Jarome has got a great resume. He doesn't get injured. He keeps on producing, right? So he deserves that 3 years. He deserves the $16 million. It's less than what Stastny's contract was, right? So out goes the center, in comes the winger, veteran leadership, all right? He has a knowledge of the Western Conference, as he was there just 2 years ago with the Calgary Flames, right? So I don't know. I think it's a great signing for the Colorado Avalanche. And again, 3 years, going back to the 3-year deal, all the young guns on the Colorado Avalanche, McKinnon, Landeskog, Duchesne, these guys aren't going to be getting their main contracts for at least like 2, 3, 4 years, right? At least. They're going to get their minor league deals and then their tie-over contracts. So this contract will not affect Colorado's future at all. It's just veteran depth, leadership on the wing, but with more skill than a lot of people give Jarome Iginla credit for. He could just light it up this year with that offense, man. He really could, especially on the power play. So I'm very interested to see what Jarome Iginla does in Colorado. And in my opinion, that was the best signing, the most valuable signing out of all of them this year. All right, so there you go, boys. There's my opinions on a lot of the things that happen in free agency. I don't want to go through everything. It's going to take way too long. But go nuts in the comments. If I miss something that you guys want to talk about, comment away and somebody might respond to you. This video is all about anything that happened during the offseason. All right, so let me know what you guys think, and I will see you in the next one.